Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us today. And now I want to go one step deeper into some of our most exciting innovations.
Hi, my name's Natalie Mead, and I run the SC team for APJ and Snowflake. And at the beginning of the year, we brought you our Discover series, and that's where we really got into data warehousing and data engineering and building apps on Snowflake. And then in June, we were super excited to bring you Summit, where we talked about all of our new releases like large language models, LLMs, generative AI, Snowpark Container Services. And then after Summit, we were really excited to see you in person at our Data Cloud World Tour. And now we have one more Discover session for you. And if you ever wondered who thinks about our roadmap or who builds our roadmap or who looks at how we're going to release products, well, that gentleman is Christian Kleinerman. And we're very excited that he will be at this next Discover series, and he'll do a Q&A session with everyone where you could ask him questions around what we're doing with LLMs. How is our partnership with NVIDIA going? Where are we looking to move Snowpark Container Services? How do you build a native app within Snowflake? So join us in November. We're super excited to have him here, and we'll see you then.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back, welcome back. It is day 2 of Discover. How did you enjoy yesterday? I loved it. I hope you did. I mean, we're very much on a theme this time of, looking at, I guess where do we start from? We started from some basics, but also this is a theme around Snowday. So we really spent a lot of time looking at a lot of the innovations that came out of the Snowday announcements. Yesterday, we breezed through, I guess, generative AI. We took a look at going through and doing an anonymization of data. We looked at a whole range of new capabilities across the platform, which just keeps growing and growing. So it really was quite amazing. The thing that I guess, popped out for me yesterday was this goal, and Christian Kleinerman, who was yesterday with us twice on live Q&A, the thing that came out was this drive for simplicity. So how do we make it easy? How do we make it quick? Yep, sure, there's pieces that are still evolving. It's still very early. Some of this that haven't released yet. We had lots of questions about, but what if I want to do this? I think where we are is this idea of making it very simple to bring, open source pieces together, to go and build models, to go and achieve and build applications very rapidly really stuck out to me. And the simplicity of this sort of turnkey click, point, shoot type idea. So hopefully you got that as well. It's going to be really exciting to watch how this evolves, as things come out of, private previews and they come into full release in our hands and we use them. And then, we'll charge ahead into Summit next year, and we'll have, we'll see them mature some more. So it's going to be really, really exciting. And one thing I've learned in my sort of few years at Snowday is this company has an amazing lineage of actually doing what they say they do. They set a vision, they execute quickly, and they actually produce high quality products. So I'm going to be really interested just to see exactly what comes out of all of these announcements and where we can push the boundaries to. So let me just tell a little bit about what we have on today. So let me put some slides up here onto the screen. So welcome. What are we going to learn today? We're going to learn a few things. We're actually, over this session, we've been looking at both basics from architecture. We've been onboarding for those of you who are new, and we always have a few new folks, just how to get into Snowflake, how to get into data engineering. But we've also been looking at things like hybrid tables. We talked about streaming, user-defined functions. We're going to touch on Streamlit some more today as well. We are definitely going to be talking more about Snowpark. We've got 2 sessions that are specifically on Snowpark, more on LLMs. There's an LLM workshop coming up as well. So quite a large gamut of different topics. And we've got a very interesting one coming up first off to get you going today, which I'll announce. Very briefly, this is a live event and it's free. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, yeah, I'd like to invite a colleague to this, grab the link that you used to join us today and send it out to them. And yeah, you can join on live. It's very quick to sign up and you can just get the link straight away and you can join. We'd love to see you here. Now, a little bit different. For those who are Discover kind of, old hands, you'll know that we've been doing this live and not recording because, this is fairly simple. It's just put together by a very small team here. We try and just connect you to our local SEs. because of that, it's just been a lot to go and get through the recording. Now, this time I am actually going to try and record all of the sessions. We'll turn those over as quickly as possible. There is a process that we've got to do to get these out to you. And we'll give you actually recordings. If you attended the sessions today, we'll give you a recording as soon as we can and be able to go back and review the sessions. So hopefully everyone will be happy to hear that, along with other resources that we've done in the past. If there's links to quick starts and things that presenters mention, we always provide those as well. If you have any questions today, just jump into the Q&A. We have our fearless SE team who are there ready to ask questions, and not even about the topic that's been presented, just in Snowflake in general, if that comes into your mind. I'm sure they're more than happy to answer general questions. And also too, I would say go and have a look at the Snowday announcements if you haven't seen them. I've got a little QR code here. You can go and have a look at that. So go and check out the actual Snowday announcements because I think they're really, really valuable. I'd also say too, if you've got any problems, questions, I had one yesterday, how do I connect to my account team? Where do I get a hold of someone in Wellington was one question I had yesterday. You can just kind of go and have a look here. This is my LinkedIn, or you can Google it, David Waitman, Google it, just send me an in-message and I'll do my best to help you out as well. So hopefully we're fairly easy to get a hold of. So if you've got any questions, where's my video, what's happening, I need to get a hold of someone, just feel free to reach out to me and I'm more than happy to service those. Now, we've got hopefully something very interesting. I'm going to see if our first guest can come up on stage in a moment. Our first guest actually is I guess what we would say, it's one of you. Now you get to hear us talk all the time as the vendor, and as a vendor who makes a product, everything's great, it all works well. We like to wax lyrical about all the wonderful things we do. But what do you think? What was your vision of it? So I'm very, very, very happy to welcome Vijay out. Vijay, are you there? I hope I'm just going to check that I can hear you.
Sure. Yeah. Hey everyone. David, can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can. So welcome to Discover, and thank you so much for joining us. So Vijay is a chapter lead at Spark based in Auckland. He has actually got quite some experience with Snowflake, but he's going to talk about his lens, I guess, from a data engineer, from someone managing the platform, from someone who's built some really interesting solutions and supporting a broad business at Spark, and hopefully also give you some insights. And Vijay, you've got a demo for us as well, don't you?
That's right. Yeah. I hope it works fine, but yeah.
Well, we had it's live, so if something goes wrong, it's fine. So the Discover folks who are on today are pretty forgiving. But that is super keen because we have people come up and talk. And when I spoke to Vijay, I said this is a really technical audience. Like, don't have to hold back. And Vijay's like, I'll build a demo. I can't obviously show them our live production environment, but I'll just build something in a generic environment, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So Vijay, I'm going to let you jump into your presentation. Maybe you can just introduce yourself a little bit more fully than I did there. I want to thank you so much for joining us. There'll be some time for question and answers, folks. So I'd love to see you put some questions as Vijay's presenting. Just pop them into the chat so we don't lose them. And then at the end of the session, we'll take some Q&A as well. And with that, over to you, Vijay.
Thank you, David. Let me quickly share my screen. And just let me know if you can see my screen now.
Perfectly.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Vijay Srinivasan. So I'm very thrilled to be here today to share insights on a fascinating topic. I have 20 plus years of experience in the industry. I started off as a developer working on C++, Unix, Oracle, Sybase and stuff. And I know it sounds, I'm from Stone Age. Of course, I moved on being a software designer and an architect. And because I was in a consulting industry, I even did some program delivery and account management for a brief period. But somewhere down the line, I realized that the next big thing is in data. And I made a career-defining shift to become a data architect. And Spark New Zealand provided me with the opportunity. They trusted me. And I can say, hindsight, it was the best decision that I took. Without an introduction about me, in the next 45 minutes, I would like to describe how Spark New Zealand set about building a unified data platform to help accelerate our transformation to a truly data-driven enterprise. Probably the proof of that was Spark winning Snowflake's Data Driver Award this year for APAC region. For people who don't know about it, this is an award that Snowflake introduced a few years back, and it's awarded to customers in APAC, Americas, and Europe region. And this is something we're very proud of. So I'm going to share a story of what went in to achieving this. So in today's session, I'll be delving specifically into the initial part of our journey. Like I'll be focusing on our back setup, warehouse setup and optimization. How did we templatize the ELT processing? And how did we even set up the row access policy? And finally, how we set up the monitoring and alerting. Like David said, I've decided to be brave. I've planning to do a demo today. So I'll quickly go through the initial presentation and then I'll jump into the demo. Let's hope that's a wise decision. Nevertheless, I hope the session sparks meaningful discussions and inspires new ideas. All right. So just a quick summary of Spark and what's Snowflake at Spark. So as New Zealand's largest telecommunications and digital services company, Spark New Zealand has a powerful purpose, which is to help all of New Zealand win big in a digital world. This can obviously only be achieved if we have a robust, reliable, and scalable data platform. And like if you see here, this is like a summary of our Snowflake usage at Spark. I've just taken the usage from our biggest instance of Snowflake. Of course, we do have multiple instances. One thing I wanted to point out is that when we started creating warehouses, we did not create a warehouse for each team or each group of users. Instead, we thought it would be better to identify the usage pattern and assign warehouses accordingly. So if you compare it with some of other implementations, maybe the number of warehouses is much smaller or something. It could be quite different. So just to give you an idea, this is before we started our Snowflake journey to a unified platform. This is how it looked. I'm pretty sure many of you in the session it looks familiar. Our legacy setup was a complex web with multiple data platforms servicing different use cases. And it was almost impossible for us to get a unified view of our data within a time frame that could deliver value to the business. And as a result, we faced a lot of pain points, right? Like suboptimal customer profiling and targeting, resulting in not so great customer experience. And we didn't have a view of cross-channel moments of truth, and there were too many single-channel messaging, ineffective insights and actions due to multiple handoff points and the process and platforms. And also we had the cost of acquisition was increasing, high churn and pressure on marketing budgets. Right? I mean, I'm not even going into the pain that the operations team felt. That's a totally different story, right? Then this is our current architecture. So we made it was a 3-year program where we migrated away from what we had into Snowflake. So we have now Snowflake as our single unified data platform, and things actually started falling into place. Whether it's a traditional batch load or a streaming data load or a CDC, for which we use HVR, by the way, and whether it's a structured data or semi-structured data, or whether it's an analytics use case or machine learning use case, or even data as a service or data products for that matter, we are now able to service it from a single platform, which is Snowflake. And it has now become very easy for us to get a unified and timely view. We are actually able to unlock certain patterns in our data and introduce products which are more relevant to our customers, which previously we probably weren't. We found it very hard to do that. From an operational perspective, we are now able to identify issues much earlier and react to them before they become a major problem. For example, in our legacy setup, some of the key daily reports, it used to take sometimes up until noon on a day to get the data refreshed in a report. Now it's like consistently the data is ready by 4 a.m. The reports are published 6 a.m. And so it's when people come into office, everything's ready for them. And we don't need to call our DBAs at odd times. I'm pretty sure that sounds familiar to many of us, right? Integrating again, I mean, not just doing what we were doing earlier. Now we are able to integrate with external data sources natively using Snowflake. I'll just give you a quick example. So one of our use cases where we had to enrich our address information with Uber's H3 index. It's a geospatial index that Uber has introduced. Uber is a Python library for us to calculate, right? You just need to pass the latitude and longitude, and it'll return the H3 index. In a traditional setup, you will take the data out, you'll use a program, pass the values, and get the value back, load it back into Snowflake. Now it's very, very smooth. We've just created an external function, and it's part of our daily batch load SQL. Just like you're calling, just like how you do any aggregate function or any normal inbuilt function. We just call this external function, and everything is calculated. It made our life so easy. And of course, we do have our partners and customers, and we're able to share data much more safely, and it's very easy and a timely manner, right? And I definitely want to bring your attention to our most successful data product until date. So it's called Brain. Brain simply stands for Build Robust AI for Next Best Action. It's a completely AI-powered decisioning engine. The best way to explain Brain is to think of how we as humans act, observe, learn, and act in a better way, right? Let's say, for example, I've got a platform now, and I suddenly decide that I want to sing a song, right? Most of you would either log off, some of you will tell me to stop, or some of you will endure, and you would think to yourself saying, okay, I'm never going to attend a session that this guy is going to be the presenter. Now, when I collect that feedback, that's a gold mine of information for me. That will, if I haven't learned it already, that will help me decide that I should never sing a song again in a group, right? And similarly, or now put that kind of the whole cycle into a data world where we go out based on the traits of the customers. We have an idea and we decide, okay, we will offer this particular customer this particular offer at a particular time, and we do that action. And based on the customer feedback, we get a sense of whether they liked it or not. And of course, in this point, it's quite easy to say, but it's very important for us to attribute the customer's behaviors to the multiple different offers. Among the multiple offers that they may have received, you should be able to attribute it to the right one. So once we attribute the feedback, the learning engine kicks in, and then identifies and learns from the customer's behavior. And as this cycle runs for a few times, the impact of the learning engine is extremely huge. And Brain, at its core, aims to provide personalization at scale to deliver optimal customer experience efficiently, easily, and in a secure way. And what's where are we today, right? I mean, what has it enabled us? So now, to understand the impact of Brain for Spark, it's important to understand how it has helped us transform the data tribe, the tribe that I come from within Spark. So we've now moved away from a service model to a product model. That is away from working on ad hoc requests to a model where we co-create with the users. And we, the data tribe, are now a profit center rather than a cost center. And that's a very, very huge achievement for us. And as I mentioned earlier, we are now focused on building data products, and these have put us in the front seat of driving innovation and growth at Spark. And it's not just about growing and showing the value. It's also about keeping our staff really interested in what they're doing, and this has made that possible. Now that I have briefly painted a picture of how amazing the destination is, this is where we are at the moment. But I would like to focus on some of the key architectural and design patterns that we used during our journey to give us a solid foundation for the platform. As I promised at the start, I will use a demo to further elaborate some of the key setup that we have done. Of course, I'll not be able to show our production instance of Snowflake or any of the instances of Snowflake that we use internally as much as I would have liked, because it would have made my life easier. I created a new instance of Snowflake, and just for the sake of the session, I've recreated some of the key things that we have done. And I'll be using that to in the demo today. So before we start the demo, let's assume we're starting a new company and we will talk to three key stakeholders, right? So let them lay the requirements for us, right? So obsolete, data architect, business owner. And let's listen to their requirements. Of course, obsolete is telling us that he or she needs a repeatable mechanism for creating new databases and schemas with the role-based access control automatically set up. And the role-based access control mechanism must be scalable, whether it's a couple of databases or 200 databases and multiple schemas, it should be scalable. It should be a repeatable pattern. And the data architect says, okay, give me a separate database where I'll create the templates and I need to host it there. And it should do all the ETL processes. And of course, the business owner is going to talk about the data sensitivity. They want to have the ability to mark certain data sets as sensitive. Only the approved users will have access to those. Immediately, my obsolete says, look, you can have that, but my sensitive use cases should not mean that you will start creating new templates and new log tables for every such use case. And it becomes a nightmare for me to handle it. It should be the same template, sensitive or not, it should work. And data architect says, yeah, you can have a generic user for a non-sensitive data set and a special one for a sensitive data set. And of course, the analysts, similarly, you have two different types of analysts, which we will be setting up today. And then we ask the business owner, okay, we will do a POC for you and show it to you. Just give us some idea about what kind of a data set we can assume. So generic data set, they say, is an account. A sensitive data set is a customer. We will see why when we go into the demo, why we call this the customer data set as sensitive, right? And of course, obsolete had a few other stuff requirements as well. When it comes to Snowflake, we need to know how to right size the warehouses. And obviously, Snowflake gives you the option of automatically scaling in and scaling out. But the obsolete also wants to be able to scale up and down in a not manual fashion, right? This should be an automated fashion. And we also want to have a monitoring alerting through email and automated incident ticket creation. And in today's demo, we will see how we will achieve all of this with just Snowflake as a platform and not using any other platform, right? So before I go into the demo, I just wanted to give a kind of a blueprint on what we're going to do. So we'll take a Snowflake account and we will create two databases manually, and that's the ops database and one is the business logic database. The ops database obviously will contain the schema where we will have the logs table, where the ETL logs will be returned. And ops database will also host those procedures, which will help us create the databases and schema, which will host the business data and stuff, right? And also it will also take care of the setting up the roles and the entire role-based access control structure. And these things will have to be repeatable template. And the next one in the business logic database, today we will just for the demo, we will just choose how to implement SCD2. Pretty sure most of you would know what SCD2 is. So we will create a template, which is, again, can work on any number of tables, doesn't matter, with just a single record of configuration, it should work. And using the DB, the RBAC and DB procedures, we will create a couple of databases today, and which obviously we'll have a raw database where you will have a generic data set. If you remember what the business owner said, we will have a account table and also a customer table in the raw. And obviously the SCD2 will act on this raw data set and create a similar mirror image, but it will be a curated SCD2, which will contain all the history. And finally, we'll also obviously look at the different roles that we will be creating. And this is how the final setup will look like at the end of the demo. Before, again, I just wanted to take a minute or two just to show you, just to make it clear on how the RBAC design is going to be. This is a blueprint for the RBAC. So if you see, these are the two databases, the raw database and the curated database. And like the business owner said, they wanted separate separation, data isolation for the restricted data. So in the raw database, we will have a restricted schema where we will host the customer information. Similarly, in the curated database as well. And if you can see, so as a repeatable pattern, what we're going to do in the demo, you'll see it in the demo, is that we'll be creating 4 different roles for every object, every database or a schema, right? We will create. So there'll be a read, write, admin, and support. So as it is intuitive, so read will have a basic set of privileges on the database and the objects under the database. And write will have everything that the read has, plus some additional privileges. And admin will have everything write has, plus some additional, and so on and so forth. And we will create it for every database we create. And if we are introducing a restricted schema within a database, we will have the same structure, but it will apply to the schema and the objects underneath the schema, right? And if you note, none of these roles will ever have access on the warehouse or will be given to the user. These are just the access roles which will only have those privileges defined. And we will actually create functional roles which is what is more relatable to the end user. We will have a generic analyst, a customer, a privileged analyst here, a support role, and a generic ELT role, and a couple of privileged ELT roles. And as you can see here, the generic analyst will have read access to everything that is non-sensitive. And similarly, the privileged analyst will have read access to everything that's non-sensitive. In addition to that, we'll have read access to the sensitive data as well. And similarly, the ELT role, same thing. And you will see the same thing, same kind of pattern repeat for the ELT role, which are sensitive, which have access to the sensitive data, right? And finally, the support role will inherit all the individual support roles, access support roles. And now we have set up the access and functional roles. Finally, we will see how we assign it to the users. Obviously, we're not creating users today, but finally, it's easy to understand. We will assign these roles, grant these roles to these users. So we've got Tomcat, who's the privileged analyst, and Jerry Mouse, who's the generic analyst, and the Spike Dog, who's the support user. And there'll be a batch schedule, which will have all the different roles. Now, this is how the overall structure will look like when we finish our demo, the RBAC structure. I know it looks very confusing here, but we will go through it step by step. With that, we get into the demo. Let me bring that up. Oops. There you go. All right, so let us start. So obviously, this is how it'll look when we start. As you see, this is a completely new account. These are the default roles that are available. And there's obviously no databases, nothing except the initial incoming share from Snowflake. So let's start. And I'm just setting it to my time zone for the account. So I'm just going to create a warehouse first. So we will just create a warehouse. And when we're creating the warehouse, just note, want to draw the attention that I'm using specific parameters, right? I don't want to leave it to the default parameter. And I'll show you why it's important, because it's helped us, and I'll show you with some proof from what we have done internally at the end of the demo. And let's first grant the usage on the warehouse to sysadmin. Now, what we generally do is that sysadmin will be used to create all the database objects, and we will use security admin to create the users, right? And that's the principle we will follow. We'll just now create there are 2 databases. Like I said, we will create manually the business logic database and the ops DB. And we will create a schema each internally. And I'll quickly So now so why am I giving the usage to security admin to be able to create procedures in the ops database? Is, if you remember, we need to have a mechanism to repeatably automatically. You will have to create the roles, the access roles, and grant them to the functional roles. And for that, we will create a stored procedure which will be executed as owner, and the owner will be security admin. And I'll walk through the code and it will become very clear. Now, before we get into setting up the RBAC, there's one important thing that we need to do. And this is something it's quite useful. So one of the requirements was to have a row access policy, right? So in this example, we will create a row access policy. We will use a combination of a tag, a mapping table, and then finally we will have a row access policy, which will use the tool. It's a kind of a 5-step process, and we will go through the first 4 steps now. The final step I'll indicate to you when we come to that. So let's first create a tag, and of course we will apply. This is important. We have to grant the apply on the tag to the security admin, because we will be adding the tag to a role when we create the roles later. And that's very important. That's the final step. So the next step is obviously to create a mapping table. And if you look closely, the mapping table will have 3 columns. One is database name, a schema name, and the tag value. And it will become very clear why we need that. The next thing, now that we have created the tag and we have created the mapping table, we will create a row access policy. It will actually take the input of the database name and the schema. And all it is doing is it's joining the table, the mapping table, using the DB name and schema name. And it's checking the current role and retrieving the tag value and seeing if the 2 tag values match. If it matches, then it returns true. Or if the current role is an account admin, it's default true, because you want to allow account admin to do everything, have access to everything. Similarly, for support role and the sysadmin role, we want them to have access. Finally, if it's a non-privileged user and the data is actually not sensitive, then we return a result as true as well. So that's what this row access policy does. And we will see in how it works. And so once you create the row access policy, we're just going to describe it just to look at it. Because if you want to alter the row access policy, you'll just alter the body and stuff most of the times. Now let's create the log table. Now we wanted, if you remember, the ops lead wanted us to have a single log table, whether it's a restricted use case or a non-sensitive use case. We want to log everything in the same table. So we will create this log table using the row access policy. And as you would have guessed, the 2 parameters is the target schema and the target database. So let's go ahead and create that. Now, we will just create those functional roles, and then we'll grant them to sysadmin. And you can always automate these things, which we have done internally, but for the sake of the demo, I'm just running individual sequels to make it quick and easy for us. And finally, I'll just grant the warehouse usage as well to these functional roles. And there are certain things that we need to do, which is for the functional roles we just created, we need to let them have access on those 2 the manually created databases, where the business logic and ops DB. And these are one-time setup, so I'm just going to give them as just a SQL here. And we'll soon come to the template part of it. Yeah. Cool. Now that we have done that, now let's look at, so now we've got everything, the manual stuff out of the way, where we've set up these databases. And if you look at the roles, so we've just created some additional roles here, and we will just keep seeing this. So these are the additional roles that we've just created, the analyst. And if you note, we don't have those the roles which have higher privilege. That will be created by the process that we will be running. So now, first thing, so we have to set up the database for the raw data to come in, and we will have a database for the curated data. And as you've seen in the presentation, every time we create a database where we will post the business data, we want it to be a repeatable fashion, and we want the roles to be automatically updated. Hence, we will look at a stored procedure and set of stored procedures actually that will take care of that. So before I run this, I'll walk you through the logic quickly of what these stored procedures do. The first one is very simple. We're just saying create Snowflake database. We'll give a name, and we'll just say create, pass a mode. Could be create, recreate, or cleanup. So all it does is just create database if not exist. The next thing it does is it calls the procedure, which creates Snowflake roles. And one important thing to note is these set of stored procedures, they all execute as owner. And for each of them, we will create them with a particular owner. And the database creation, like I said, we will do it using sysadmin. And let's look at the other one, create Snowflake roles. When we create it, I'll just give a quick view of what each stored procedure does. Now, again, if you note this is about creating the roles, and we are going to execute as owner again. The owner here will be security admin, right? So now I'll go ahead, create the procedure. I'll walk you through what it needs to be done, what the logic is. And one other additional thing that needs to be taken care is that I need to grant usage on the procedure to sysadmin, because obviously the sysadmin here will call the roles procedure that we just created. So if you look at this procedure, it's a very simple mechanism that we have adopted, where we said, okay, we decided we'll have a read, write, admin, support, access roles for each database. And when we started doing this, before we got down to implementing stuff, what we decided was we will first come up with a design that will actually help us do this. In the sense that we said, okay, for all the different objects that Snowflake has, for the roles that we want, read, write, admin, and support, what is that we want to have? So read should have, so wherever it says yes, those are the things that read should have. For example, at a table level, should have references, select, and all that stuff. This is probably an older version, but yeah, you get the flow, right? Write should have everything, admin should have all of this. And similarly, we've decided for each of the objects. And that design translated into this procedure, which is our implementation. So if you see at different level, if you just related to all those individual tabs, so we have at the database level, what's that you want to have. And before we do that, we first nail the inheritance, like what you have, what the read can do, write can do as well. What write can do, admin can do. What admin can do, support obviously gets to do, and a bit more, obviously. So you'll have those levels sorted out here. These are just part of the query. So we're just saying grant all of that on schemas and future schemas, for example, and that goes on, right? So that's at the different level, different object level, we set that up. And finally, at the end of it, what we do is we grant the access roles to the functional roles, and which is what is the most important thing to do at the end of it. Now, if you see, when I create a new database tomorrow, because of these things, my support role will automatically start getting those access support roles. So it'll without having to do explicitly, once I define the functional roles, these inheritance will automatically be taken care, and it's a totally repeatable process. Now we've seen the procedure to do the, let's go back here. Let's create these two databases, right? And once you do that, obviously, I'll come and refresh here. And you're going to see the access roles here. And you see that the whole thing is building up. And obviously, if I click on this generic analyst, so this guy has the DB read automatically assigned to it. And if I see the support role, has the access support role assigned, granted to it. Let's do the same for the next one. We will create the curated database as well. Again, you'll see the same thing repeating for the curated database. Now, the next thing that we need to do is create the schemas. If you remember, we'll have one generic schema and one restricted schema. So we will see we'll first create the stored procedures and come back and run those sequels. Similarly, again, I'll use sysadmin and execute as owner for creating the schema itself. So what is important here is the parameters that you need to pass in. So you need to obviously pass the database name where the schema is going to be created and the schema name, obviously. And next couple of parameters are important. We're saying restricted, yes or no. Is this schema going to host restricted data? If it's yes, what is the tag value that you want to use for the data contained within that schema? And obviously mode, we create cleanup. If it's a non-restricted schema, all this procedure does is just create the schema, if not exists, with manage access, and that's it, exits. But if it's a restricted schema, then what we do is we call the other store procedure. Essentially, we have to create those additional access roles, which will act only on that particular schema. And let's go and check that out, right? Just with similar to what we did for the database level access roles, we will create it using security admin, execute as owner. Obviously, we need to grant usage on this to sysadmin, and the same pattern repeats with certain additions. I'll highlight the additions to you. So now, the first thing we do, if it's a create, we revoke all privileges from the database access roles. So what it means is, as soon as this particular schema, this particular store procedure is called, and you create a restricted schema, you need to remove access from the database access roles because they are going to be assigned to the generic user. So we revoke all that. And then we set up new set of hierarchy for this particular schema. And that's what we do here. And rest of it is very similar. We follow the same design pattern. And finally, and this is the most important thing, this is the fifth step for setting up the row access policy, right? I'm creating the ELT role, which is the functional role. And I'm saying with a tag, this is the same tag that we created in step 1. And the parameter that we passed, which is the restricted use case, which is a string that we will match in the row access policy, right? So that is important. And this is how you have those 5 steps and have them work together. Now let's create that. It should have been done, I think. Yeah, no problem in doing that again. And let's go here. Let's now create the schema. So that's the generic schema, and it should not have resulted in any additional roles than the database roles that we have. So if you see, there's no restricted roles. It's all both the curated and the raw database roles. Now we will first create the first one. And if you see the string that I'm passing, this is the tag value, customer PII. And we'll just create, like always, sorry. Right, this is always what will happen in a demo. Let me go and quickly check that. Come back, let's see if it works. Otherwise, I'll pick up my other instance. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Yeah, that's worked. And let's look at the roles that have been created here. Now you will see all the roles that are created specific for that particular schema. And this is the admin role. I'll look at the ELT role. So the ELT role will have the generic ELT and the particular schema's admin role as well. And let's go ahead and create the curated databases schema. With that, actually, we've set up the RBAC. We've set up the mechanism. We've just seen the mechanism of how to have a repeatable process for creating new databases, new schemas, and it just can scale to an unlimited number. Okay? So I just have to just call it, and it'll do the stuff. The next thing that we will see is how to have a repeatable pattern using Snowflake's information schema extensively. Actually, have ELT done. Now we are looking at SED2, like I said today. We just see how an SED2 can be done in a repeatable fashion. And let's go. I'll just quickly run through this. First thing, obviously, we need to create the tables, the raw data tables, and just for our demo, we will assume that this tables will contain the latest and the full data. It's just like a CDC that you get from a system of records. Whatever this data there is, you'll just see it here, right? Let's assume that. So we have what we created is an account table and a customer table. Account table goes into the raw database, the generic schema. Customer goes into the restricted one, and you'll see we'll create a lookup table, right? This is the table that drives all the ELT processing that we'll be doing. And all I'm saying here is what's the target database name, schema name, and what's the source database name, source schema name, and source table name. And for each table, what are the key columns? For example, account will have account ID and customer ID. Customer will have just the customer ID. Because this is important, where if you know SAD2, you'll know why this is important, right? So I'll just insert these two records to the lookup table. So what it means is that if you're introducing new tables in future, you just need to add this record here, and the template should automatically take care of doing the SAD2 for that. So we'll just see what we have inserted. And now that we've created the roles, just to show you how the row access policy works, I've just chosen one of the privileged user, a privileged role, and you look up you query the lookup table, right? You see two records. Now I'll take the generic one, generic ELT role, and hopefully I should see only one record. And that's how the row access policy works. And the generic user will never know even the existence of those privileged data set. So whether it's a lookup table or in the logs table, wherever, it should not know. Now let's see the procedure for SCD2. I'll quickly I'll show you the procedures for that and walk you through the logic, how it's implemented. Before that, first thing we do is obviously create a procedure which will be used to create the logs in the log table, right? For every important step that we take in the procedures, the ELT procedures, I wanted to log it into the logs table in the ops database. So the first thing for the SCD2 itself, I've created two procedures. One is the wrapper, which basically it just goes to the lookup table, retrieves all the records. For each of the record, it will loop through and then carry out the SCD2. And that's the primary purpose of the wrapper procedure. We'll first create that. I'll quickly walk you through what it does. As you see, it'll look at go to the lookup table, retrieve the values, and then we will create a transient table. It's a temporary, it's a staging table. Think of it as a staging table. It'll calculate the hash key of all the non-key columns. We've just assumed simply that any column that's not defined as key column is a column that we are watching for a change. Of course, you can make it more complex by making that configurable as well. But for this demo, we will just use it this way, right? And using all that, we will create a transient table. And then what we do is we check if the table or the SCD2 table already exists. Obviously, in the where we are now, the SCD2 table does not exist, right? So if it does not exist, we will create the table and we will add all the columns that we need for the SCD2 itself. And if it's existing, what I do is I call a store procedure, which will check if there's been a schema drift, that is, if there's a new column that has been added. I don't worry about the columns that have been deleted, but I'll make sure if a new column is added, I will go and automatically add it to the target table, right? So those are the things I will take care of in the wrapper. Now, before I go to the store procedure, which does the actual SCD2, let's quickly create the schema drift procedure. It's a simple set operation. It'll compare the source and the target, do a minus operation, find out if something is missing in the target, and it'll add it it'll just alter table add it. It's quite simple. And this is the final procedure, which actually does the merge query for the SCD2. And because it's a template, there's no way that this procedure can predetermine what the column names are and stuff. It has to be dynamically generated. Now, this procedure is quite long. I don't want to go through it one by one. Simple thing is, it just does makes a lot of use of the information schema. And what it does is generates a merge query like this. And it'll differ from table to table. This particular merge query is auto-generated. And if you see what I'm doing, there are two, it's a union of two subqueries. Essentially, the first part, I'm identifying all the records which are reinserted for a deleted entity, or a new record for an update, or a new record for a previously deleted entity. The second part is to identify records which are completely new that's coming in. And finally, I'll be merging it into the target. And that's what it does. The store procedure has generated this query for me, and it will execute that particular query. And of course, I don't have much time, otherwise I would have gone into a bit more detail, but let's see how it works. Now that we have created all the stuff, we'll come back here. Now let's see what we have. So that's this stuff. So the account table does not have any values. Let's insert one record, right? And obviously, if you select, so we'll go here. This is the generic role. For that, sorry, I will insert records into the customer table as well. It's just sysadmin. So that's done. Now let's run the SCD2 procedure with using the generic ELT role. So if you remember, the generic role should only act on the accounts table and not on the customer table. Although we have inserted 3 records there, it should just only do that. And let's see if that happens. David, let me know if I'm going, if it's like I'm taking extra time. I can.
No problem. We've got a couple of questions, so I think we probably would have some time just to delve into those, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. So now let's see. We've run the SCD2 procedure using the generic role. And if you look at the table that has been created, now this is important, right? So this is the table that did not exist, and our procedure created this table. If you look at it, it'll have all the data from the source table, and it will create the additional columns which are specific for SCD2. start time and end time. We call this the eternity time, 9999, year 9999. So that's it. Instead of having null, we like it that way. And then the run ID obviously is insert the run ID. There's been no update on this record. Insert timestamp. This is the latest for this particular key, and it's not deleted. It's active, right? Now we will use the elevate the privileged ELT role, and before and we will run the SAD2 again, the procedure again. Now it should be able to pick up the value. It should be able to process the data from the raw customer table, and it should create a new table, which is this one. Before that, we will go look at the logs, right? So if you see, like I said, it should loop through all the existing tables that are there, the target and whatever is there, and it should automatically say, for example, this is how it looks like. You'll see this query here. If I paste it over there, this is how the log will look like, and this is the merge query that was done. The reason why we wanted to log this is, if you remember, if you've used Snowflake, the query output is not normally available for every user, right? You have to be the user which executed a query to see the query result. And for us, we found that it's useful for the support person to be able to actually see the result as well. So we kind of logged it. So now that we have done, now let's do, this is what we've seen. We've seen the SAD2 work. Well, let's make some changes to it, right? I'm going to alter the account table, add a column, and then I'm going to update a value, and I'm going to insert a new record there. And on the customer table itself, I'm deleting a row, and I'm just inserting a new customer table, right? So new record in the customer table. Now let's use the elevated ELT role, run the SAD2 again. So it should ideally take care of all the different scenarios, and it should take care of that for the restricted table, also the generic table as well, the customer and the account. So we should see 6 records in the log table. This takes a few seconds to finish that. Now it's done. And let's look at that. Like I said, there should be these many records in the log. Let's go and look at the actual account table. So this was the initial row. That was the account 01, customer 01 combination. You'll see we have changed it from Freedom Plan to Freedom Plan 365. And you see the start date and end date. So you see the new record has the eternity time as the end date. And this is like 12:58:00. This is +1 here. And we're updating the previous record as the run ID 3 has updated it. And this is the update time. It's no more the latest. The new one is the latest. And it's not deleted. And you see this is the new column that has been added as well in the target table automatically. And similarly, if you look at the other table, you'll see all of that. So let's say, what did we delete? This is the one, customer 003, right? So this is the one, the record 3 and 4. So what we do is the start date, end date, this was the existing one. We say this, and what's important to note here, it's not the latest and it's not deleted. So we want to still hold the information of from what time to what time it was actually active. And we create a new record where we say the latest flag is, this is the latest flag, and it's actually the status is deleted. And that's something we do, right? That's what the process has done for us. Now,
Perfect. We're just running out of a little bit of time here. I'd love to get to a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You were on a roll. I could see you were ready to go all day. And considering the effort you've put into putting all this together for everyone, I didn't want to cut you short either, because I know that's quite a heavy lift.
Yeah, go for it.
So that maybe just a couple of quick questions, because we're coming up into the hour. So thanks so much for the walkthrough. The first one was a bunch of people wanted to know if you could share your sheet, and I would suggest we might be able to get it out to you, but maybe you can just take Vijay Srinivasan's name down and maybe reach out on LinkedIn. But what I liked was we talk a lot about role-based access from the implementation side and the technology, but your flow from actually mapping it out, which is a key step, mapping it out beforehand and going, this is what we want before you jump into the tooling and start doing. And I thought that was super nice, actually. Super nice. Let me see. So there's a couple, I'll just pick them in no particular order, but Sarah asked, she said, thank you so much for the insightful presentation. With regards to next best action, have Spark experienced an improvement in conversion since implementation?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I don't remember the exact numbers. I think we had 17 or 27% uplift in terms of our conversion, and it's actually reduced our cost as well, in terms of, instead of blindly going out to all of my base, or like half of my base for every offer or whatever. Now we are able to go to, because it's personalization at scale, we're able to go to the right person at the right time with the right offer. And that's made a huge difference for us.
Perfect. Vinette asks, he asks, hello, just wanted to get your thoughts. You mentioned before Snowflake, your architecture had multiple data platforms and did not have a unified view on data. Why not opt for an MDM solution in such a case?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing, right? I mean, the legacy stuff that we had was, you might have guessed, is that we acquired it over a period of time. Different platforms came into being at different point in time for Spark as an enterprise, as the things evolved. And I would say it's also probably the reason is because of the structure we had earlier. We moved to a enterprise agile structure in 2018, 2019, I suppose. And most of these platforms were before, so the teams were organized in a very different way. And a lot of these things contributed to what we had in legacy. And it was a mess.
There comes a side where it's beyond governments if the architecture has some points in there. Another question from Kanwal, I think it is. Are you not using Terraform for managing and configuring Snowflake?
That's a really, really good question, Kanwal. I mean, I know Terraform does a lot of this. So in this demo, I did not do anything beyond Snowflake, but in our what we are doing internally is we have a control plane, right? So it's called a CLI, and it's something that we have developed internally. Does quite a bit of this automatically. It's got a CLI, it's got an API, and we are building a UI for that. So eventually, our vision is that the support person, if they have to create something new, they just come in, configure it in the UI, click submit. Automatically, it's taken care of. They don't even need to log into Snowflake. Of course, they will look at it once it's done to make sure it's there, but it's a process that can be just done through that. And what happens in the background is what I've shown. I know for sure Terraform does quite a bit of this as well, but we have not used it.
Yeah, perfect. So maybe just one final question, and I guess just to ask, really for those who are starting out, I mean, if you've obviously got a lot of experience, you mentioned 20 years in domain experience, and obviously you've been with Snowflake for a while. If you're sitting here, you're looking at Snowflake, you're considering it, what do you do? What did you do to sort of get started, best source of information? How did you sort of bootstrap your journey into Snowflake? Maybe you went through a formal course, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are multiple ways, right? So what helped us, of course, was, this is a shout out to the entire Snowflake team we have. Richard and Trevor, they've always been there for us. We have a lot of very active engagement with Snowflake, a lot of training that actually has helped us bring all of our people up to speed very quickly. That's a very good place to start. And there are self-paced online learning as well. I would definitely recommend that. And the good thing, what I personally found useful, was that Snowflake offers you 30-day free usage, 400 credit. Talk to your account exec. He might be able to help extend it if possible. It's a really, really nice way to learn, do things and learn stuff. It's very, very useful.
Perfect. That's a great tip. We went a little bit over, but it was well worth it. Vijay, thank you so much for presenting today, taking the effort to put all of that together. I want to capture it somewhere, so we can run it because capture it and put it somewhere, because a lot of effort went into actually delivering it. It's interesting seeing delivery from someone who's actually in the field, thinking about how they implement as compared to just us as a vendor, where we tend to be a little bit just technology focused. I think that was a really good lens. We'll have a 30-second break because it ran over a little bit, and then we'll dive into the next section. But Vijay, thank you so much again for joining us today. That was absolutely invaluable, and I'm sure everyone just loved it. Thank you.
Thank you, David.